Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. How have you been this week? I had quite a few work and school deadlines that all collided together, which has made it a week. So for this week's video, I thought it would be fun to give you a glimpse into my very realistic planning and journaling routine during a busy week. If watching a few clips of my journaling and planning routine mashed together all in one video sounds interesting to you, then please grab yourself a snack, a beverage, journal, a planner, or any activity that you'd like to work on, and please get cozy while we hang out for the next few minutes. And I have to admit that this video was inspired by a few comments that I've received lately about how some of you have been planning, journaling, or even co-working with my videos. I love that so much. Hearing that actually brought me so much joy and really motivates me to continue making these videos if it means that they can be helpful for you and if they can keep you company while you complete whatever task you're working on. I do know there's research out there on the benefits of body doubling and how the presence of someone else working alongside you can help you stay focused on your task. But I haven't had a chance to research that topic to a point where I feel like I can really share my learnings around it. But if that's something that you'd be interested in hearing more about in the future, let me know. And I can definitely look into it because I've been meaning to look into it for myself anyway, and this would be a win-win situation if there are others who would be interested in hearing about what I learn. Anecdotally though, as someone who works exclusively from home, I know that it can be really isolating, and I do find that finding new ways to motivate myself to stay on task is so important. And some things I've tried in the past are hopping on a virtual call with a friend or a coworker and doing our work while we leave our cameras on, but ourselves muted, so we can kind of visually see that the other is working. And being there on the call, at least for me, it keeps me accountable. And then every so often we unmute ourselves and take a quick break and catch up and chat for a bit before we return to our work. So that is something that I have found to be really helpful in the past. And I also really like working in coffee shops and sometimes just going over to a friend's house and working alongside them. I've also found going to work at a library has been helpful for me to stay productive when I'm working on deep thinking tasks like report writing. But if I am in a lot of meetings, then obviously I have to stay home. So it's not always possible for me to leave the home to get my work done. And a lot of work I do is highly confidential, so it's not always so easy to have my screen open in public, which is why I find having these virtual co-working sessions or sometimes putting on some coffee shop music or like a YouTube video in the background, I find can be really helpful for me. So the first thing that I'll talk about is meal planning and how I adapted that for a busy week. So last week when I sat down to do our meal planning, I could see that I had a lot of late nights coming up, and I knew that especially this week that just passed, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do much cooking. So we planned to have a low cooking week where we could do as much as we could during the weekend and also tap into our freezer, where I've been stocking up on frozen meals that I knew I could draw from during a week like this, where we just wouldn't have time to do any cooking. I also wanted to share a realistic view of what it looks like when I'm meal planning when I'm not filming a video. So when I'm filming a meal planning video, I'm usually sitting at a desk, but honestly, I'm usually sitting on a couch and watching TV at the same time, just keeping it real. Another thing that I did recently when I knew that I was going to get really overwhelmed and busy was I asked Mike to jot down some meal ideas just to help me get started with planning, because when I get overwhelmed, I really like to reduce the amount of decision making that I have to do in areas where I can delegate the decision making. And so the great thing about having a separate book for meal planning is that Mike can go in at any time and he's not necessarily seeing any sensitive information or getting distracted with work-related things that he doesn't need to, and he can just go in and write things down. So he kind of planned our meals for the next 2 weeks, and I just based our grocery shopping list off of his suggestions, and I allocated the meals that he had written down on nights where I thought I'd be able to cook, or on nights that he'd be able to cook. So that worked out really well, and I think moving forward, I'm gonna continue encouraging Mike to help out, because it's a lot more fun when we're doing these things together, and I like to make sure that we balance out our meal plan to have meals that I really like and I enjoy cooking, and also the same for him. And later that weekend, I pulled out my 5-year journal and caught up on the previous week. And when I'm doing that, I reference my weekly views in my cousin and my health and wellness tracker to remind me what happened over the last week. And I find that 1 week is enough time for me to be able to recall what I did, as long as I have some notes to remind me. And now that I'm in my 2nd year of updating my 5-year, I take a little longer updating it, because I'm always getting distracted by reading what I wrote the year before and reflecting on how things are similar or different, which I just find is really rewarding overall. And I love being able to see that growth. Interestingly, though, having said that, I have noticed that this time last year, I had a string of blank entries, which tells me that I must have been going through a similarly busy period where I probably was too overwhelmed to even sit down and write anything. And I don't think I even have any photos from that day. So it's really interesting in itself, because I know that I can start to struggle to function in every aspect of my life except for work when I'm going through periods like that. And so this is just another reminder that maybe there's something about March where things just get really crazy, and I should watch out for that next time, because something's going on where I'm letting myself get so busy that I don't even apparently have time to take a photo or write any notes about what's going on. So I think that's really interesting. A friend once told me that energy is finite, and if you're constantly spending it, then of course you're going to run out of it. That always really stuck with me, which is why I think it's so important to build in opportunities to rest and recharge after an extremely busy period. Because again, like I could just keep going on like this for a certain amount of time, but if I don't take some breaks, I'm just gonna run out of steam and shut down completely. Since I was working a lot of late nights, I tried to balance that reality by taking a little extra time in the mornings to settle into my day and honor some routines that I've set for myself before I sit at my desk and start my working day. So I've been keeping my daily journal at our dining table, and my morning routine usually involves taking a long walk with Coconut while I sip my coffee. And then when I get home, I tend to have breakfast at the table and try to spend 5 to 15 minutes just doing some journaling to gather my thoughts before I start my day. If I have more time, I'll spend more time journaling, but during weeks like this, I don't always have that much time. But I try to remember that I'm going to be working almost the entire day and into the evening. So I think it's important to remind myself that I shouldn't ever be so busy that I can't carve out a few extra minutes to do something for myself, like journal. Once I finish journaling and I finish my breakfast, I come up to my desk, and before I turn on my laptop, I'll open up my health and wellness Hobonichi weeks and update some of my health and wellness trackers. So I'll check in with myself and rate my mood. So usually I'm rating my mood in the morning. I'll make note of my sleep, and I'll also take a look outside my window and note what the weather is like in that moment. This only takes a couple of minutes, and sometimes it feels like it's borderline me procrastinating with starting my day, but it's also just a really quick win for the day. And I find that when I skip these small things in the morning, then I just end up feeling off. So I do really like to start with taking, the minute or two that it takes to update my health and wellness. Once I've done that, I'll open up my calendar. So this is my digital calendar, just to double check my meetings for the day, because sometimes I'll have some meetings that might get booked the day before that I might not have seen. And so I'll just double check to make sure that I am not missing anything, and I'll cross-reference that with what I have in my cousin, just to make sure that I've got everything noted down. Because throughout the day, I prefer to keep my cousin open as a reference as opposed to keeping my calendar open on a Chrome tab on my screen. Of course, I check my calendar and my email a few times throughout the day, again, just to make sure that I'm not missing any last minute meeting invites. But for the most part, I am referencing my cousin. And then I will sometimes skip this, but like my health and wellness tracker, I find when I do skip it, I feel really off, and I just feel a little bit like lost if I don't do this. So what I'm referring to is after I'm kind of finished double checking my calendar, I'll open up my traveler's notebook and set a to-do list for the day. And that gives me an opportunity to double check my to-do list from the day before and bring over any tasks that I didn't get finished. And then I'll put together a plan for the day. I do sometimes skip this when I get really hyper-focused on a task. So for example, if I'm working on something like a report, which might take me a few days to complete, then sometimes I will skip doing my to-do list because my one task of the day is really just to continue chipping away at my report. So sometimes I do skip it, but I honestly find that I feel so much better and I feel more set up for the day when I do take the time to do my to-do list, especially because it is overwhelming to think, oh, I've got this huge report due. But it's less overwhelming to think, okay, yesterday I did these things for my report, and today I'm going to focus on these other things. And even though I'm not expecting to finish it today, maybe there are 3 to 5 things that I can finish today to cross off my list and consider myself still on track if those things get done. And I always keep my A6 Fun, Hobonichi, Techo, and my 5-year near my desk just in case I have time to update them. And this week, that did not happen at all, and that's okay. So you can binge all the videos in the list. I've been trying my best to keep up with them every day, and I didn't really expect that I would reach for it, even if it might have been good for my mental health to take a couple of breaks. Sometimes forcing myself to take a break in the middle of the day causes me more stress than it does just powering through, and maybe that's some backwards thinking because I think breaks are healthy, and I always take a break for lunch and feel refreshed after that's done. So maybe that doesn't make sense, but when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and stressed, I do struggle more to add something to my plate, and in some ways updating my A6, even if it's supposed to be for fun, can feel like a task. So I don't push myself, but keeping them nearby allows me to reach for them when I need a break, and even if I'm not updating them or adding something to it, I find flipping through the completed pages also brings me a few minutes of joy. So there's something really satisfying about that crinkle sound that the pages make when I turn them. And I just really love small things like that. So instead of scrolling through my phone, I'll grab my A6 and I'll just do a little bit of flipping. And something else that I did this week is during my lunch break, I made sure that I ate lunch away from my desk, and I actually used that time to catch up on the 8 pen questions videos that have been getting posted on a daily basis. So if you haven't already checked out the 8 pen questions, I highly recommend looking up Simone's playlist where she's been adding everybody's video submissions. Love learning more about everybody's pen preferences, and I love learning more about different inks and hearing everyone's stories about how they got into the hobby in the first place. That's been a really nice way for me to give myself a break in the middle of the day and just take my mind off of all of the things that I've been working through this week. That's all that I have for you today. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around until the end. I'd be curious to know what you thought of this style of video, and if you'd be interested in seeing something like this again in the future. I had a lot of fun experimenting with different filming styles, especially because I didn't really have an opportunity to sit down and research a topic because of how chaotic this week has been. So yeah, let me know what you thought, and hopefully things will be a little less chaotic next week. And I hope you're doing well and keeping on top of your self-care. I would love to hear in the comments, what is one nice thing that you have planned for yourself coming up in the next few days? All right, well, thanks again for being here, and I will see you soon in the next video. Bye.